Produced by Malik.
What is going on, world? Welcome back to Malik's Water Garden. This is going to be a video where we're going to be looking at how to winterize your fish room. If we all live in colder climates, most of us, either up north or further down south from the equator, and we all experience some type of winter in our fish rooms. Now, in my case, it's actually quite extreme. Our winters are like quite cold here in Canada, and it has been getting colder. So winterizing your fish room and making sure everything is up and running is a very important factor of running a fish room like this. And so in this video, we're going to be looking at that. If you haven't looked at yesterday's video, I highly recommend checking that out. I'll put a link to it up here. And we're talking about test fish and the recent ick outbreak that I'm dealing with. The first thing I'm going to say in that regard is I actually did get new medication, which is this right here. This is the Nox Ick. So this is basically Malcoside Green, 0.05%. And it's really low concentration, so you can actually get this in 100% or 50% concentration. And I highly recommend using low concentrations. And I did buy a whole new bottle of 100% strength. Just in case something does come up and stuff. Now, this is for catfish. It says to use half dosage, and the dosage on this is 1 drop per gallon. So I've been using 7 drops for 10 gallons, and I've been monitoring my red lizard catfish, and this is the only tank I use this medication on to make sure that it does not affect the fish adversely. And I'm still monitoring the tank really closely and making sure nothing goes wrong. Now, in terms of today's video, how that correlates is the first thing I'm going to say is have things that you might need in an instant, like medications at hand. Like when winter arrives, a lot of times there's a lot of latent diseases or dormant diseases in our tanks that have been sitting in the tank for a while that has not shown itself because of the high temperatures and the summer conditions. And as the temperatures drop or something might go out of whack, you might not remember to turn on the heater for a few days. Your temperature might drop a few degrees than what it's supposed to be, and all of a sudden you might have an outbreak of something. So having medications at hand is highly recommended. And some of the medications I recommend are stuff like Levomycol, like here. You can buy this in powdered format, and it's a broad spectrum antibiotic, and you can use it for deworming and stuff like that. It's really good. Ick medications also highly recommended. Another thing I actually recommend is Metroplex, which is this stuff. So either Metroplex here, which is not a paid advertisement, but or Metronidazole. You can buy this stuff, I think, from Big Al's Pet Shop Supplies, and so that's where I got these from. And this is good for bloat and other issues like internal parasites and stuff like that. Neomycin or Neoplex is also really good. Kanamycin, which is Canaplex, also great. All these are like broad spectrum antibiotics. They can be used for various types of diseases, and get some other types of broad spectrum skin disease controls, antifungals like these things right here. Methylene blue is great. Methylene yellow is or methylene yellow or Malcoside green is also great. But also be careful with a lot of these products because they can chemically sterilize your fish at high doses. Not this, but formalin and stuff is really strong and really bad for your animals, so you have to be really careful how to use it. And also recommended is to consult a veterinarian if you have the option to, or recommend consulting your local pet store manager or somebody that is trained in that regard of using medications and figuring out what type of medications work with other medications to give you the optimal results and stuff like that. Now, having said that, another thing I want to recommend doing is making sure your heat source is up and running. I live in a commercial unit above a store, and my fish room actually shares its boiler with 3 other apartments and stores. So the 2 apartments actually are not vacant. One is a safe for a jewelry store that is downstairs, and one is a real estate and construction office that is not they don't use the office for anything else except getting mail. So I'm pretty much the only commercial / residential tenant up here, and this is not rated a residential property, so I can't get residential insurance. I have to also get commercial insurance for this property. Now, because I share this large boiler with all the people, I actually, went and did a check on the boiler, made sure that it's working. I made sure that it can hold my temperature. It's actually 8 or 9 degrees right now. It's going to go drop a little bit lower in Celsius. Today it's going to be about 5, 6, 7 degrees in Celsius tonight, and I'm making sure that it's actually maintaining this temperature and it can actually hold it. When it gets colder, I'm not maintaining this temperature indefinitely. This is just because I'm dealing with the ick, but it's a good opportunity for me to test my system, make sure my boiler is working properly before it's a dead of winter and my boiler stops working. So that's something I highly recommend, is to test your heating system if you are on a central unit. Make sure that it's working properly in the beginning of the winter or right before that, so that if there is an issue that you want to fix that before it's too cold and then the temperature starts dropping and then you find out there is an issue. And so another thing I did was I made sure that my chimney pipes and everything, that the exhaust and stuff from the boilers, all the other exhaust that comes up from the top of the house is all clear. There's no debris stuck in them and all that stuff. And I did all that earlier today, and I'm going to do some more maintenance work in that regard in the next day as well. And so that's a really key factor. And another thing I did today was I went and replaced my air filters and made sure that my air filters are up and running and proper, because in my central air system that runs through the apartment, especially through this part of the apartment, it needs to have proper filters. It's a commercial unit as well, so that needs to have proper filtration pads, and they're not cheap, but they are rated for it actually sucks up coronaviruses, it sucks up all kinds of mold, mildew, and all other stuff. That's what I actually have it for, to make sure there's no mold and mildew growth or anything like that. I mean, the air is quite dry in here now because the heaters are on and the humidity is under 20%, but at the same time I still make sure there's no mold or mildew by using those things, and also making routine checks, and there's no moisture in the apartment anywhere. Like, I don't like moisture like that, so that's a very big thing for me. So I changed the filters. It's what they use for schools and stuff for right now for COVID, so I'm pretty happy about that. So I highly recommend making sure that that stuff is all working. Another thing I'm doing actually is going and picking up a few more heaters. I don't actually use heaters in the fish room, but I do have tanks outside that require heaters, and I like to have backup heaters to my fish room as well. So I'm going to pick up like between 5 and 10 heaters just to have, and to have 2 for the outside and a few small ones to have in the inside of the fish room just in case. And also check all my power heads and make sure everything is working, clean them, make sure everything is up and running. Also, I'm checking my temperatures in the tanks to make sure that the power heads are not heating them up beyond where I like to keep them or where the fish are comfortable. So all these things are a factor. So I mean, that's another thing I'm going to say. And also, if you guys are running external controllers for your thermostat, so like in Canada and the US, the brand that is everybody's recommending is I think it's Inkbird is the famous brand. So I did some research today, and they have like really good ratings. A few of my friends also told me that's the brand they're using. This is also for Dr. Thomas. He actually reached out to me yesterday and wanted to know what type of temperature controllers are better for external controls. Highly recommend getting some external temperature controls for some of your systems, so that you're not depending on the thermostat on the heater to turn the heater on and off, because that could fail, and having external control is highly recommended. So comment below and let me know if you guys are using external controllers and what brand it is, especially if you are in North America or Europe, because especially in Europe actually, because Dr. Thomas is in Europe. So I would like to help him out to find the best brand, the most reliable brand that is also economical for his purpose, because I think he needs like 20 of those guys. So even at $50 a piece, it's gonna add up and it's gonna be quite expensive for him, and I want to make sure that he gets a really good deal and a really good product. So comment below and let me know what you guys think is the best external thermal control unit for your fish tanks in your personal experience. Thank you so much. Another thing I want to say is making sure your electricity is running. So something I've been actually quite concerned about even in the last few years, but just because of where I live in a really high tax paying neighborhood, and our electricity is quite stable even in the dead of winter, even through winter storms, ice storms. I've had electricity in this apartment. Like when other places in the city didn't have electricity for days and weeks. I mean, I've been here for 10 plus years now, and there was not a single day that had power outage that lasted more than an hour. So I mean, I'm pretty grateful for that, but at the same time, I think I feel like that's a false sense of security. So I should have a secondary form of getting heat into the apartment in the winter, and I feel like I should get a generator So I'm actually looking into that, and I'm actually doing some research, and it's going to be difficult to get a generator set up into this apartment just because of wiring and stuff, and where it's going to be set up will be outside, and I'd have to get the power in somehow into the apartment, so I'd have to get an electrician. And there's a few things that I had to overcome in that regard, but especially when I do move to the new location, that's probably going to be one of the first things I want to add to the fish room is definitely a secondary power source that is not dependent on the grid. So we are going to be looking into that. So stay tuned for that and subscribe, because we are going to be planning on a move at some point next year, or hopefully in the beginning of 2022, if everything does fall into place properly. Now, having said that, the next thing I want to say is just making sure everything is up and running, making sure that you have no issues with your heat, you know, your power sources. Having some backups is a really good idea. Having backup air pumps, having backup medication, having a tank that's backup just in case, a hospital tank that's up and ready and running. It's a really good idea in the winter months. Another thing I want to really stress is through the winter when it's really cold, I rarely bring fish into the fish room. So you are going to be seeing less fish coming in after the next shipments come in from Jason, which is coming in next week. Some really cool fish is coming, so stay tuned for that. We might get some really cool fish. And the last thing I'm going to say is make sure all your wiring is good and solid, and all your power bars are up to date. Have backup systems for those, like power shut-off switches if it gets too hot, or the power consumption through the unit is beyond what the unit can handle, or your system, your electrical systems can handle. So that's a really good idea, using a controllable, you know, like a surge protected power bars. Highly recommended. And making sure that there's no electrical fires or anything like that. I really want to make sure you guys are all safe through the winter. And you know, if you are using electrical heater, make sure it's not plugged in and directed towards any fabrics or anything that can catch on fire. If you are using an oil-based heater, make sure it is up and running properly and it is not making carbon monoxide. Also, getting a carbon monoxide detector is really advised. Something my mom bought me when I moved to this apartment. Actually, she bought me a few things: smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, smoke alarms, and also smoke diffusers, whatever you call those, fire extinguishers. And so these things are really good to have as well. And make sure everything is up and running properly, and routine maintenance and stuff like that. And happy fish keeping as always. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you on the next video. God bless you all.